Was seeking a new weapon aimed not at the body, but at the mind.
Those who control your words control your mind.
You say the president is using mind control.
Smart home devices and even your home security system can all be used to cyberstalk you.
Of the agents experienced sort of pressure on their head. They reported hearing a strange noise and a ringing in their ears. Both of them also became nauseous and dizzy. Now, their symptoms are consistent with what's known as Havana syndrome.
Continues on the 10 o'clock news. You'll find out if electromagnetic mind control is even possible and how.
U.S. officials say there are now 130 suspected victims, mostly CIA operatives and U.S. diplomats being treated for brain injuries, debilitating headaches and vertigo, the targets they believe of a directed energy microwave weapon.
Hundreds of people in the valley say they are hearing voices in their heads. Those voices are being transmitted by microwave or other methods.
Well, several viewers asked us to investigate what they call electronic harassment. KMIR 6's Angela Monroe joins us now with what she's discovered. Angela.
Electronic harassment, synthetic telepathy, voice-to-skull technology. Chances are you haven't heard of these terms, but after searching the internet, I found dozens of websites dedicated to the phenomenon and several Valley residents who say they're victims.
How much more can you invade me than to go into my brain?
By the early 60s, we had captured a device. It was actually during the Vietnam era, and we captured a Russian device called the LIDA machine, L-I-D-A, which was actually looked at by a guy named Ross Addy, one of the leading researchers, again, for military. He looked at this, and it was used for putting military prisoners of war into trance-like states using flickering lights and sound and electromagnetic field oscillations so that you would get in a very relaxed state, in a state where they could extract intelligence much more efficiently from you. And that became a whole new review for military technologists in this country, thinking maybe we can use electromagnetic fields to manipulate what's going on in the brain. In 1969, there was a book published called Towards a Psycho-Civilized Society, and this was put together by Jose Delgado, and he had his doctorate in electrophysiology from the University of Madrid from 1950. He came over to Yale University in the mid-60s and began mapping the human brain, stimulating the human brain in primates and bulls and animals, all different kinds of animals, stimulating different parts of the brain to see what parts were responsible for what kinds of actions or cognitive functions and so on. So what he was doing in those days, in the 60s, was he was implanting microcircuits, and then, or not microcircuits, circuits, and stimulating them with RF, radio frequency energy. So one of the illustrations or photographs shows a charging bull coming at him, and he throws the switch, and the bull stops right in front of him. Well, by the mid-'80s, he figured out you didn't need any implanted technologies. All you needed to know was how to modulate the right frequency. And the energy density, the concentration of energy, was 1/50th of what the Earth naturally produces. Very small energy in the RF range, radio frequency ranges. Now, compare that to what's around us right at the moment. At the moment, there's 200 million times more radio frequency and energy around us in any urban area than there is naturally produced by the Earth. So a huge amount, and out of all that background noise, what he found is by hitting a precise window frequency with very low energy concentrations, you would pick that signal out because it was coherent, not like nature all over the map. It was a coherent rhythmic signal in a very precise frequency. The brain would pick it out, and he could change behavior from lethargic to highly active, back and forth, like switching on and off a light switch.
Let me ask a question right here. Is that with a subject that was in, say, a short distance of whatever he was utilizing to affect this particular pulse, or is this at large? Could he do this on, say, larger groups?
You could do it on an individual basis or a very large basis. In fact, if you go back to the work of J.F. Gordon MacDonald, he was a geophysicist at UCLA, and he was a science advisor to Lyndon Johnson. He wrote a chapter in a book called Unless Peace Comes, and the chapter was called How to Wreck Your Environment. But within that chapter was a section that said, If we could ever learn how to electronically stroke the ionosphere, this layer that begins about 30 miles above the Earth's surface that's electrically charged, if we could ever figure out how to electronically stroke it, he said, to get it to send a signal back to the Earth, we could affect the behavior of people over huge geographic areas on a hemispheric basis. And it wouldn't affect everyone. It would affect 70 or 80% of the population is what they more or less figured. But this was a technology that didn't exist in 1969. In the early 70s, Zbigniew Brzezinski referenced J.F. Gordon's work and said, you know, this is a technology that will likely emerge. What has happened with a project that I wrote a book on some time ago, Angels Don't Play This Harp, about the HARP project, it was designed to do many things. As a side effect or a deliberate effect, this can happen. You know, I mean, the fact is they generate the right kind of signal in the right range to override brain function. And that you can kind of look at the brain in sort of this way in terms of predominant brain activity. 1 to 4 hertz or pulses or vibrations per second. This is where you are in your deepest states of sleep. The next range, approximately 4 to 7 hertz. This is the theta range, the theta range. This is where you are between awake and asleep, when you're consciously aware of your dreams. This is where little kids are between 3 and 6 years old, why they have trouble distinguishing reality from imagination, because of the way the brain works at that time. A little bit further up, you have the alpha range, 7 to say 11, 12 hertz in that range. This is where you are when you're in the zone, when you're doing your art, your reading, your research, when you're really focused. You know, that's where you want to be. And then above that is the beta ranges, where people should be when we're actively having this kind of a dialogue. And then high beta is where you are in your agitated states. If you think about affecting the brain by analogy, similarly to dialing a radio station. You know, when you dial through the radio station, most of the energy is just static. You're static between the stations. When you get on station, you get resonance, harmony between the transmitter and receiver, and you get a nice clear signal. The same is true in the human body and the human brain. Whether you look at it at an elemental level, the elements that compose the body, or you take it all the way up to the organs of the body, you can create modulations, oscillations that will override the brain's natural rhythms. The brain will entrain or lock onto that external signal and begin to mirror it.
By putting this coherent signal in.
Right. Coherent, meaning rhythmic, not random.
Right.
And so it's not so much the amount of energy, it's the way the energy is manipulated. And so what they
Based on 28 years experience and research, I have determined there are thousands of victims who have been targeted by an illegal U.S. government rogue criminal enterprise that is active 24 hours a day throughout the United States. A network of victims who work with me have reached the same conclusion based on 1, their personal experience. These are the people who have come to me. 2, the significant number of victims, thousands of them. And 3, the extent and intensity of the harassment. I'm talking about micro beams, I'm talking about surveillances, I'm talking about poison gas, everything evil that you can think of.
Most people don't believe that. Oh, you can't control me. I have my own free will. There's no way you can get to my soul. Well, sorry, that's not true. So these nanoparticles are activated under certain magnetic frequency and will alter the brain patterns and pathways. Recently, my school came out, Harvard came out with what you see here on the right slide is the magnified view of a needle that's injected into the brain and puts the scaffolding over the brain, and then it's read that way at a much finer resolution. So let's talk about a little bit about deciphering the audio and visual cortex. So researchers at the University of California, Berkeley have invented a brain decoder device that's able to work out what you're thinking based on neural activity inside of the brain. Now, they use mostly what's called functional MRIs. But you could use any of these technologies I talked about. If you're reading text in a newspaper or book, you hear a voice in your own head. usually, most people, are reading kind of aloud in their own head. Well, they can read that, decipher the words that you were thinking to yourself. So there's another one, University of LA, maybe Stanford University. They are decoding visual images. So they train the person under a functional MRI, that's the standard technique, to look at images, and then they record them, and then they ask the person to imagine the object. It can also just be imaginary. And the computer will decipher the brain code, and so you're looking at a hammer, you're looking at a saw, that's a house, that's a cat. So the technology in the civilian sector is coming along quite quickly. Somebody apparently from NASA leaked this as something they were working on. And telepathy, electronic two-way communications. Well, we have that now. And that's very scary if you never experienced it. Making humanity think an alien invasion is about to occur at every major city. Well, we have holograms in the sky. I described that technology. And, you know, they talked about other things that might make this come about. But all I am saying is beware.
Boy. Voice-to-skull technology. This is also in the foray of directed energy weapons.
What is that?
The ability to, let's just say, throw your voice into your head, or my voice into my head, or allowing algorithms that now they can blanket a whole geographical area, and they can make everybody change their thoughts. They can, I use the term intrusive thoughts. Back to that fork in the road analogy. If you find yourself where you have to make a decision about something, next thing you know, you catch yourself kind of having an argument in your head with your own voices. Well, the ability to add another one of your voices in there, but have it controlled by somebody else's microphone, so to say, is a very powerful tool. And I think this is a weapon of war that we are seeing happen to everyone around us.